Imagine this, you walk into a room, shoulders squared, heart steady, ready to claim a moment that's rightfully yours. The air hums with possibility, and for a fleeting second you feel unstoppable. Then, out of nowhere, a voice cuts through the silence, sharp, cold, and dripping with judgment. You don't belong here. 4 words. 4 tiny daggers that pierce your pride and leave you reeling. Have you ever felt that sting? That moment when someone sizes you up before you've even had a chance to speak, deciding your worth based on nothing more than a glance? If you have, then you're about to connect with a story that'll hit you right in the soul. And if you haven't, buckle up, because what's coming will open your eyes wider than ever before. Welcome to Top Point, where stories don't just play out, they burn bright, shake you up, and leave you changed. I'm your guide, and today we're stepping into a tale so raw, so electrifying, it'll have you gripping the edge of your seat. This isn't just about drama, it's about defiance, about truth rising from the ashes of prejudice, and about a twist so bold it'll make you want to shout. Picture a woman strolling into a luxury store, her steps quiet but her spirit towering. She's there to savor a victory years in the making, only to be met with the manager's sneer. "Get out, you're bothering my customers." He calls the cops, ready to haul her away in disgrace. But here's where it flips, because she's not just any shopper. She's the new owner of the whole damn chain. And as if that's not enough, while he's busy harassing her, a real thief is slipping diamonds into her bag, unnoticed by everyone but her sharp, unflinching eyes. This is Elaine Carter's story, and it's a wildfire of emotion, humiliation, resilience, and a reckoning that'll leave jaws on the floor. At Top Point, we don't just tell you what happened, we dig into why it matters, peeling back the layers to uncover the moments that define us. So, if you're ready for a ride that'll make your heart race and your spirit soar, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop your location in the comments, let me know where you're watching from, because this is a journey we're taking together. Those who stand against prejudice, this one's for you. Those who don't, well, maybe you'll learn something by the end. Let me take you back to a moment of my own before we dive in. A few years ago, I walked into a meeting, nothing fancy, just a small gig I'd clawed my way into. I'd spent weeks prepping, my notes crisp, my ideas sharp. But the second I stepped through the door, I caught it. A flicker in the room. A guy in a suit, older, leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised like I'd wandered into the wrong building. "You sure you're in the right place?" he asked, his tone so casual it almost hid the jab. I smiled, nodded, and sat down, but inside I was seething. I didn't have Elaine's empire to back me up that day, just a stubborn streak and a point to prove. By the end, I'd won them over, not with a title, but with the work I'd poured my soul into. It wasn't a luxury store showdown, but it taught me something. Being underestimated can be a spark, and sometimes that spark turns into a blaze. That's what Elaine's story is, a blaze that starts small, flickering in the shadows of a marble-floored boutique, then roars to life with a truth no one saw coming. This isn't just about one woman's triumph. It's about every time someone's been dismissed. Every time the world's tried to box us in, only for us to break free. We're going to unpack it all, the sting of Richard's arrogance, the weight of Elaine's silence, and the moment she flips the script so hard the whole room freezes. But it's more than that. There's a thief in this tale, Amanda, cool and collected, pocketing jewelry while the manager's too busy profiling the wrong person. It's a twist within a twist, a mirror to how blind judgment can be. At Top Point, we live for these stories, the ones that make you feel, think, and talk long after they're over. Elaine's day didn't start with fireworks. It began with a quiet cup of coffee and a dream decades in the making. She stepped into that store not as a stranger, but as its owner, carrying the weight of her past and the promise of her future. What she didn't expect was a fight, not just for her place, but for justice itself. So let's dive in. Let's walk those gleaming floors with her, feel the tension rise, and cheer when the truth hits like a thunderclap. This is Top Point, where the stakes are high, the lessons are deep, and the stories? They're unforgettable. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and let's get started, because Elaine's about to show us what it means to stand tall when the world tries to knock you down. Every story has a beginning, a seed planted long before the world takes notice. For Elaine Carter, that seed took root on a chilly autumn afternoon, decades before she'd ever stepped foot in that gleaming luxury store as its owner. Picture a little girl, no more than 8, standing on a bustling city sidewalk, her small hand tucked into her mother's. The street hums with life, cars honking, heels clicking, voices overlapping in a symphony of chaos. But Elaine's world narrows to a single point, the glowing window of a high-end boutique, its display a constellation of sparkling handbags and glittering jewelry. She presses her nose to the glass, her breath fogging it up, eyes wide with wonder. "Mama," she whispers, "why can't we go in?" Her mother kneels beside her, her coat threadbare but her smile warm. "Someday, baby," she says, voice soft but steady, "you'll have more than you could ever dream of. You'll walk through those doors like you own the place." Those words weren't just comfort. They were a promise, a torch passed from one generation to the next. And Elaine carried it with her through every storm, every doubt, until it lit her path to that fateful day. Welcome back to Top Point, where we don't just skim the surface, we dig deep, unearthing the moments that shape who we become. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join us, because Elaine's story is just getting started and it's one you won't forget. Last time, we left you on the edge of a cliffhanger, a woman judged, dismissed, and nearly thrown out of a store she secretly owns. But to understand why that moment hits so hard, we need to rewind. Elaine didn't wake up one day as a titan of business. Her empire wasn't handed to her. It was built, brick by brick, on a foundation of grit, faith, and a memory she'd never let fade. Let's step into her world long before the marble floors and crystal chandeliers and see where this fire was born. Elaine grew up in a neighborhood where dreams were big but pockets were small. Her mother, Grace, worked double shifts at a diner, coming home with sore feet and stories of rude customers who tipped in pennies. Her father was gone before Elaine could remember his face, leaving Grace to raise her alone. Money was tight, but love was plenty. Grace filled their tiny apartment with laughter, hymns, and lessons disguised as bedtime tales. "Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard," she'd say, brushing Elaine's hair before bed. "And you, my girl, you've got both." Elaine soaked it in, a quiet child with a mind that raced faster than her legs ever could. She'd sit at the kitchen table, scribbling numbers in the margins of old newspapers, dreaming of a life beyond the cracked walls and flickering lights. But dreaming wasn't enough, not when the world kept reminding her of her place. At 12, Elaine got her first job, delivering papers before dawn. The cold bit at her fingers, and the weight of the bag bruised her shoulder, but she didn't complain. She'd save every dime, hiding them in a tin under her bed, whispering to herself, "Someday." School wasn't much kinder. Teachers overlooked her raised hand. Classmates snickered at her second-hand clothes. One day, a boy named Tommy smirked and said, "You think you're going somewhere? Look at you." Elaine didn't cry. She went home, pulled out her tin, and counted her coins twice. "Someday," she repeated, louder this time. That word became her shield, her sword, her North Star. Let me pause here and bring you a story of my own. Not Elaine's, but one that echoes her spirit. Meet Maya, a girl I've imagined, inspired by countless real souls I've met along the way. Maya's 16, working weekends at a corner store in a town that feels too small for her ambitions. Her dad's a mechanic, her mom's a nurse, and they scrape by, just like Elaine's family did. One Saturday, a woman in a fur coat breezes in, drops a 20 for a pack of gum, and doesn't wait for change. Maya watches her leave, the bell above the door jingling, and feels a pang. Not envy, but resolve. That night, she sketches a dress in her notebook, bold lines and bright colors, something she'd never seen in that dusty store. One day, she tells herself, "I'll make something they can't ignore." Years later, Maya's designs hang in a gallery, not a boutique, but the spark's the same. A refusal to let the world define her limits. Like Elaine, Maya turned a fleeting moment into fuel. Back to Elaine, because her journey wasn't a straight line. After high school, she took night classes at a community college, juggling waitressing shifts to pay the bills. Finance fascinated her. Numbers were a language she could master, a way to build something solid. She graduated with honors, but the job offers didn't come. Interview after interview, she'd see the flicker in their eyes, surprise, then dismissal. "Too young," they'd say, or "We're looking for a different fit." She knew what they meant. A black woman with no connections didn't match their picture of success. But Elaine didn't break. She started small, freelancing for local businesses, crunching their books until they couldn't ignore her skill. Word spread, and soon she was advising bigger clients, saving every penny to invest in herself. The turning point came in her 30s, when Grace got sick. Cancer chewed through her lungs and the hospital bills piled up like a cruel joke. Elaine sat by her bedside, holding her hand as Grace whispered, "You're my dream, you know that?" She passed a week later, leaving Elaine with grief and a fire that wouldn't quit. She took her savings, every cent from that tin now grown into a modest nest egg, and bought her first property, a rundown shop she flipped into a thriving cafe. It was the first brick. Over the next 2 decades, she climbed real estate, retail, investments, each move calculated, each risk a leap of faith. She faced setbacks. Deals fell through, banks denied her loans, whispers of "she doesn't belong" followed her still. But Grace's voice stayed with her, more than you could ever dream of. By the time Elaine finalized the acquisition of that luxury chain, she was a force, unseen by most but unstoppable. The morning of our story, she woke early, brewed her favorite coffee, and stood by her window, watching the city pulse below. Today wasn't just another day, it was a milestone. She'd done it. Built an empire from a tin of coins and a mother's promise. Dressed in a simple shirt and slacks, she headed to her new store, not with fanfare but with quiet pride. She wanted to feel it as a customer would, to touch the dream she'd once pressed her nose against. What she didn't expect was the fight waiting for her, a fight that would test her past and prove her present. This is Elaine Carter, not a queen born with a crown, but a woman who forged her own. At Top Point, we're here for the underdogs, the dreamers, the ones who turn someday into today. Her backstory isn't just history, it's the heartbeat of what's coming. So, tell me in the comments, what's your someday? What keeps you pushing when the world pushes back? Hit subscribe if Elaine's fire lights something in you, because next, we're stepping into that store. And trust me, it's about to get wild. The air in the luxury store shimmered with wealth, crystal chandeliers casting golden light across marble floors, the faint scent of leather and perfume hanging like a promise. Designer handbags gleamed behind glass, their stitching flawless, their price tags discreet but dizzying. It was a cathedral of excess, a place where status whispered louder than words. Elaine Carter stepped inside that morning, her heart swelling with a quiet pride she'd earned over decades. She wasn't here to flaunt. She wore a simple shirt and slacks, her presence unassuming, but to savor a dream come true. This wasn't just a store, it was hers, the crown jewel of an empire built from a tin of coins and her mother's faith. She paused by a handbag display, its timeless design tugging at a memory from her childhood, and smiled to herself. For a moment, the world felt still. Then, it shattered. Welcome back to Top Point, where the stakes climb high and the stories hit hard. If you're just joining us, subscribe now, because Elaine's about to face a storm and you won't want to miss a second. Last time we walked through her past, from a little girl peering through shop windows to a woman who turned someday into today. Now we're here, the moment prejudice crashes into her triumph and resilience meets its test. This isn't just a confrontation, it's a reckoning, a mirror to every time we've been judged by the wrong measure. Let's dive in, feel the tension rise, and see how Elaine holds her ground when the world tries to push her out. Across the store, Richard spotted her first. The manager moved with the swagger of someone who'd spent years gatekeeping this polished kingdom, his suit crisp, his smirk sharper. He watched Elaine linger by the handbags, her fingers brushing the air above the glass, and something in his gaze shifted. Curiosity hardening into disdain. To him, she didn't fit. No designer labels, no flashy entourage, just a black woman in plain clothes, browsing too slowly for his liking. He crossed the floor, his shoes clicking against the marble, and stopped a few feet away. "Good morning," he said, his smile tight, eyes cold. "Can I help you find something?" Elaine turned, meeting his stare with a warmth he didn't expect. "Just browsing, thank you," she replied, her voice steady as she shifted back to the display. But Richard didn't budge. "You might find something more affordable elsewhere," he added, dropping his tone like a conspirator sharing a secret. "This isn't really the place for people like you." The words landed like a slap, but Elaine didn't flinch. Her smile faded, replaced by a calm that felt heavier than anger. She moved to another section, jewelry now sparkling under soft lights, and he followed, a shadow she couldn't shake. "We get a lot of window shoppers," he said louder, drawing eyes from nearby customers. "People who look, but don't buy. Serious buyers only here." Elaine stopped, turning to face him fully. "Is that what you think I am?" she asked, her voice low but piercing, carrying the weight of her dignity. Richard smirked, folding his arms. "I've been in this game long enough to know who belongs." The humiliation stung, a blade slipped between her ribs, but Elaine's composure held like steel. "I don't think it's your job to decide that," she said, an edge creeping into her tone that made his smirk falter. "Just for a heartbeat. Let's zoom out for a second and meet James, a fictional stand-in for the rest of us watching this unfold. He's a guy in his 30s shopping for a gift, hovering near a rack of silk scarves. He's not rich, just here splurging on a bonus, and when Richard's voice rises, James freezes. He sees Elaine, calm, poised, and Richard puffed up with authority, and something twists in his gut. He's been on the receiving end of snide comments before, the "you sure you can afford this?" vibe at a car lot once, and it stings to watch it play out again. Should he say something? Step in? He shifts his weight, fingers tightening on a scarf, but the words stick in his throat. Fear whispers, "Don't make a scene. It's not your fight." So he stays silent, a bystander caught between guilt and relief, as the tension coils tighter. Back to Elaine? Because Richard wasn't done. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path to the handbag she'd first admired. "This section's not for you," he said, loud enough to echo, his smirk widening as heads turned. "Maybe the clearance rack in back," customers murmured, some curious, some uncomfortable. A woman in a fur coat whispered, "Why doesn't she just leave?" A man shifted, muttering, "This is awkward." Elaine tilted her head, her voice soft but unyielding. "What makes you think this isn't for me?" Richard's confidence flickered, but he doubled down. "I know who fits here and who doesn't. Loitering not allowed. Move along or I'm calling the cops." Elaine's jaw tightened, but her eyes stayed locked on his. "Loitering?" she repeated. "I didn't realize admiring your stock counted as a crime." He crossed his arms. "Admiring's not buying." Nearby, Tanya, a young sales associate, gripped the jewelry counter, her knuckles white. She'd seen Richard's temper before. His wrath was a guillotine for anyone who crossed him. Her chest tightened as she watched Elaine stand firm, a quiet war raging inside her. Speak up and risk her job, or stay silent and live with the shame? She took a step forward, hesitated, then retreated. What would you do? Drop it in the comments. Would you risk it all for what's right, or protect what you've got? Hit subscribe if this hits home, because at Top Point, we're all about the choices that define us. Richard's patience snapped. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the police," he barked, his voice slicing through the murmurs. "You're wasting my time and everyone's here." Elaine didn't blink. "Maybe you should," she said, her calm slicing deeper than his bluster. He fumbled for his phone, dialing with a flourish, his smirk returning as he spoke. "Yes, officers are needed at my store. We've got a woman causing a disturbance, refusing to leave." Customers gasped, phones lifting to record. James, still clutching his scarf, felt his stomach drop. Tanya's breath caught. The room thickened with anticipation, a storm about to break. Minutes later, the glass doors swung open, and two uniforms strode in. Tall and commanding, the other petite but stern. Richard rushed forward, gesturing at Elaine. "Officers, thank you. She's loitering, disturbing the peace. I need her out." The tall one nodded. "We'll handle it." Elaine opened her mouth, but the smaller officer cut her off, hand raised. "Ma'am, you need to leave, now." Elaine frowned, cracks in her calm showing. "You haven't even asked my side." The tall officer stepped closer. "The manager says you're not welcome. Go, or we'll escort you out." Richard stood behind them, arms crossed, smug as ever. The crowd buzzed, phones rolling, waiting for the next move. This is where it teeters. Elaine, cornered but unbroken, facing a wall of assumptions. At Top Point, we've all felt that pressure, haven't we? The moment the world decides who you are before you can prove it. I've been there, pitched an idea once, only to have it brushed off until someone else echoed it louder. It's infuriating, but Elaine's different. She's not just fighting for herself. She's about to flip this whole scene upside down. Why does prejudice stick in places like this? Studies show retail discrimination thrives on snap judgments. Race, clothes, vibe. And here, Richard's blind to the irony. While he's targeting Elaine, a real crime slipping by. Next time, we'll see that twist explode. Subscribe, share your take. Have you faced this? And let's keep rolling. This is Top Point, and the storm's just beginning. The luxury store hummed with a tension so thick you could slice it. Marble floors reflected the glow of chandeliers, but the light felt cold now, brittle. Elaine Carter stood at the center, her calm a stark contrast to the chaos swirling around her. Richard, the manager, loomed nearby, his smirk sharp as he watched two police officers close in. "Leave now, or we'll make you," the taller officer said, his voice flat, authoritative. The smaller one nodded, her stern gaze locked on Elaine. Customers whispered, phones raised like tiny judges, capturing every second. Richard's confidence swelled. He'd won, or so he thought. Elaine's jaw tightened, but her eyes held steady, a storm brewing beneath her stillness. She wasn't just a woman in a standoff, she was a force about to break free. And then, the doors swung open. Welcome back to Top Point, where the underdog rises and the truth cuts deep. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, because this is the moment you've been waiting for, and it's about to explode. Last time, we left Elaine cornered, judged, dismissed in a store she'd fought her life to own. Richard's arrogance, the cops' blind loyalty, the crowd's murmurs, it all piled up, ready to crush her. But at Top Point, we know the best stories don't end in defeat. They turn, they twist, and they triumph. This is where Elaine flips the script, where prejudice gets a mirror held to its face, and where a thief's cool facade crumbles. Let's step into the fire, because when the dust settles, no one's walking away unchanged. The glass doors parted with a whisper, and three figures strode in, cutting through the tension like a blade. Two men in sharp suits, their presence commanding, flanked a tall woman in a tailored blazer, her steps deliberate, her air unshakable, heads turned, murmurs rippling through the crowd. They moved straight for Elaine, ignoring Richard's puffed-up stance and the officer's stiff postures. One of the men, his voice warm but firm, broke the silence. "Miss Carter," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Sorry we're late. Ready for the walkthrough?" The room froze. Richard's smirk vanished, his face draining to a sickly white. Customers gasped, phones trembling in their hands. Tanya, the sales associate, clapped a hand to her mouth, eyes wide. Elaine turned to Richard, her expression serene but edged with steel. "I'm Elaine Carter," she said, her voice ringing clear, "the new owner of this store, and I think we've got some things to discuss." The silence shattered into chaos, gasps, whispers, a low, "No way!" from somewhere in the back. Richard's mouth flapped open, then shut, a fish drowning in the air. "You're the owner?" he stammered, his usual swagger crumbling. Elaine's gaze didn't waver. "That's right, and I've been watching how you run my business. It's been enlightening." Before he could sputter reply, she raised a hand, silencing him like a guillotine dropping. Then, her eyes shifted, sharp, deliberate, toward a woman near the exit. Amanda, in her cream blouse and tailored pants, had been inching away, her leather bag swinging heavier than it should. Elaine's voice cut through again. "Before we go further, you might want to check her bag." Every head swiveled. Amanda stiffened, her hand freezing on the door, her face paled, confidence cracking like thin ice. Richard blinked, dazed. "What are you talking about?" Elaine stepped forward, her calm now a weapon. "I saw her slip a necklace and a bracelet inside while you were busy harassing me. She's the thief here, not me." The crowd erupted, gasps, murmurs, phones zooming in. Amanda stammered, "This is ridiculous. I didn't—" But Elaine's stare pinned her like a spotlight. Two security guards, summoned by the escalating drama, moved in. "Ma'am, we need to see your bag," one said, firm but calm. Amanda clutched it tighter, shouting, "You have no right!" But the weight of every eye broke her. She thrust it forward, hands shaking, and the guards opened it. There they were. A diamond necklace and a bracelet, tags dangling, glinting in betrayal. The room buzzed with disbelief. She was stealing the whole time. A customer muttered. Amanda's excuse, "I was going to pay," faded as the guards led her to the back, her protests swallowed by the crowd's roar. Elaine turned back to Richard, her presence towering now. "This is the culture you've built," she said, her voice low but thunderous, "targeting me while a criminal walks free. That ends today." Richard's sweat beaded, his words stumbling. I didn't mean," she cut him off, sharp as a blade. "You assumed I didn't belong because of how I look. Meanwhile, she fit your type, so you ignored her. You failed this store, your staff, and every customer here." The applause started soft, then swelled, vindication rippling through the room. Tanya exhaled, tears brimming, while James, our scarf-clutching bystander, clapped too, guilt easing into awe. Richard slumped, defiance gone. "You're fired," Elaine said, final as a gavel. The cheers grew louder as security escorted him out, his shoulders hunched, his reign over. Let's step into another story for a moment. Meet Lila, a creation of mine to reflect this madness. Lila's a cashier in a different store, a small-town joint where the manager Greg loves to flex. One day, a guy in a hoodie browses too long, and Greg's on him like a hawk. Are you buying or just wasting space? Lila sees it, knows it's wrong, but she's got rent due, no power to push back. Later, she catches a regular, fancy coat, big smile, pocketing candy bars, but Greg waves it off. "He's fine," he says. Lila swallows her anger, helpless. Unlike Elaine, she can't flip the table. She's trapped. A witness to the same blind judgment. It's the flip side of this coin. Not everyone gets to wield the truth like a sword. Elaine's privilege here isn't just her ownership, it's her agency, forged from years of fighting. Back to the store. The fallout's just beginning. Elaine turned to Tanya, softening. "I've seen your potential. You're part of the fix here." Tanya blinked, tears spilling. "Thank you, Miss Carter," she whispered, a new spark igniting. Then Elaine faced the cops, pulling out her phone. "Chief Jackson," she said into it, calm but firm. "I need you here. Your officers took the wrong side without asking." Minutes later, the chief strode in, his presence silencing the room. "Miss Carter," he said, nodding. She gestured to the officers. They were ready to drag me out based on his word alone. The chief's eyes hardened, turning to them. "Is this true?" The tall one stammered. "We thought," Jackson cut in. "Your job's to assess, not assume. My office tomorrow. Disciplinary action is coming." He faced Elaine, softer. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This won't happen again." She nodded, gracious but resolute. At top point, this twist is why we're here. The justice, the shock, the way it flips every expectation. Psychologically, it's pure gold. Narrative justice hits our brains like a reward, righting a wrong we've ached to fix. Amanda's theft? It's a metaphor. Prejudice blinds us to real threats while we chase shadows. I've felt this thrill myself once, proved a doubter wrong with a project they'd scoffed at, and the silence after was sweeter than any applause. Elaine's moment is bigger, though. She didn't just win, she rewrote the rules. Share in the comments. Ever had a twist like this turn your day around? Hit subscribe if justice gets you fired up. Because next, we'll see how Elaine rebuilds from these ashes. This is Top Point, and the fallout's just the start. The luxury store was a pressure cooker, the air thick with anticipation. Marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of chandeliers, but the elegance felt hollow now, overshadowed by the brewing storm. Elaine Carter stood at the center, her calm a lighthouse in the chaos. Richard, the manager, hovered nearby, his smirk razor-sharp as two police officers loomed over her. "Leave now, or we'll make you," the taller officer said, his tone clipped, unyielding. The smaller one, stern-faced, nodded in agreement, her hand resting near her belt. Customers murmured, phones aloft, filming the standoff like vultures circling a kill. Richard's chest puffed out. He'd won, he was sure of it. Elaine's jaw tightened, her composure a thin veneer over the fire beneath. She wasn't just a woman facing humiliation. She was a volcano on the verge of eruption. And then the glass doors swung open with a hush that silenced the room. Welcome back to Top Point, where the underdog rises, the truth stings, and the stories leave a mark. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button now. This is the moment you've been waiting for, and it's about to ignite. Last time we left Elaine cornered, dismissed in a store she'd poured her life into owning. Richard's arrogance, the cop's blind allegiance, the crowd's whispers, it all stacked against her, a wall of judgment closing in. But at Top Point, we live for the turn, the twist that flips the script and sets the world right. This is where Elaine's quiet strength explodes, where prejudice gets a reckoning, and where a thief's smooth game unravels. Drop your location in the comments. Let's see where this hits you, and let's dive into the fire, because when this ends, no one's the same. 3 figures strode through the doors, slicing the tension like a blade. 2 men in tailored suits, their steps deliberate, exuded quiet authority. Behind them, a tall woman in a sleek blazer moved with a grace that turned every head. The murmurs grew, a ripple of curiosity spreading through the crowd. They crossed the marble floor, their focus locked on Elaine, and stopped just in front of her. One of the men, his hair silvered at the temples, broke into a warm smile. "Miss Carter," he said, voice respectful. "Sorry we're late. Ready for the walkthrough?" The words landed like a thunderclap, shattering the room's fragile silence. Richard's smirk froze, his face draining of color, mouth opening and closing like a fish yanked from water. Gasps erupted. Customers piecing it together, their shock a chorus of disbelief. Tanya, the young sales associate, clapped a trembling hand to her mouth, eyes wide. Elaine turned to Richard, her expression serene but her voice steel. "I'm Elaine Carter," she said, each syllable deliberate, "the new owner of this store, and I think we have a lot to discuss." The room spun into stunned silence. Richard's arrogance crumbled, replaced by a stammering panic. You're the owner?" he choked out, his usual swagger gone. Elaine's gaze didn't waver. "That's right. And I've been watching how you run things. It's been—" Before he could sputter a reply, she raised a hand, silencing him, then turned her attention elsewhere. Her eyes landed on Amanda, a white woman in her 40s, dressed in a cream blouse and tailored pants, her leather bag swinging casually. Amanda had been inching toward the exit, her movements smooth, her face a mask of calm. Elaine's voice cut through the hush, sharp and unwavering. "Before we go further, you might want to check that customer's bag." The statement hit like lightning. Every head swiveled to Amanda, whose body stiffened, her hand freezing on the door handle. Her composure cracked, color leaching from her cheeks. Richard blinked, dazed. "What are you talking about?" he muttered, voice shaking. Elaine stepped forward, her gaze locked on Amanda. "I saw her slip a necklace and a bracelet into her bag," she said, cool and certain. "While you were busy targeting me, she was stealing from your store." Gasps ricocheted through the crowd, phones tilting to catch the drama. Amanda, so confident moments ago, now looked cornered, her lips trembling. I didn't— This is ridiculous," she stammered. Elaine ignored her, turning to Richard with a look that could shatter glass. "Would you like to handle this, or should I?" Richard, sweating now, floundered. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. She doesn't seem the type." Elaine cut him off, her tone slicing through his excuse. "The type? You mean the type you assume is innocent based on how she looks, while I, the owner, get treated like I don't belong?" 2 security guards entered, summoned by the escalating chaos. Elaine nodded toward Amanda. "Check her bag," she said, calm but commanding. "You'll find what you're looking for." Amanda clutched her bag tighter, her voice rising. "You have no right! This is an invasion!" The guard stepped forward, firm but polite. "Ma'am, please hand it over." Under the weight of every state, Amanda relented, her hands shaking as she passed it off. The guard unzipped it, and within seconds, the truth spilled out. A diamond necklace and a bracelet, price tags dangling, nestled among her belongings. The crowd erupted, mutters of disbelief, a whisper cutting through. "She was stealing the whole time?" Amanda's protests faltered. "I was going to pay, I forgot." Elaine raised a hand, her voice ice. "Save it. I saw exactly what you did." The guards escorted Amanda to the back, her defiance fading with each step. Elaine turned to Richard, her presence towering. "This is the culture you've built," she said, every word a hammer. targeting people like me while letting real criminals walk free. That ends now." Richard stammered, but no words came, his shame a shadow swallowing him whole. Let's pause for a story. Not Elaine's, but one that mirrors her fight. Picture Lila, a cashier in a small-town shop, barely 20. She's quiet, keeps her head down, but she notices things. One day a man in a suit snaps at a kid, a scruffy teen browsing too long, telling him to scram. Lila sees the kid's hurt, feels it in her bones, but she's got no power to act. Then she spots a woman in heels pocketing a scarf smooth as silk, while the manager's distracted. Lila wants to call it out, but her voice sticks. Fear of losing her job chokes her. Unlike Elaine, Lila's just a witness, not the owner, and that gap stings. It's the difference between watching justice unfold and making it happen, a reminder of what power means when you've got it. Back to Elaine. The room buzzed as she faced Richard again. "You're fired," she said, her voice a quiet guillotine. Applause broke out, soft at first, then swelling, vindication rippling through the crowd. Richard slumped, pale, muttering, "You can't." "Oh, I can," Elaine replied, "and I just did." Security moved in, ushering him toward the exit, his once proud stride now a shuffle of defeat. Elaine turned to the staff and customers, her tone resolute. "This store won't tolerate discrimination or incompetence anymore. From now on, it's about fairness and respect for everyone." Tanya, still by the counter, exhaled, tears brimming as Elaine met her gaze. "Tanya," she said, softer now, "I've seen your potential. You're part of this change." Tanya nodded, overwhelmed, whispering, "Thank you, Miss Carter." Why does this twist hit so hard? It's narrative justice. Psychology says we crave it, that flip when the oppressed rise and the arrogant fall. Elaine's reveal isn't just a gotcha, it's a mirror to Richard's blind spots, and Amanda's theft doubles the irony. He missed the real threat, chasing a ghost. At Top Point, I've felt that rush, watching a bully get humbled, like the time a smug coworker got caught fudging numbers after doubting mine. It's visceral, satisfying. But Elaine's bigger. She's not just winning, she's rewriting the rules. Share in the comments, ever seen someone's mask slip like this? Hit subscribe if justice gets your blood pumping, because next, we'll see how this ripples out. This is Top Point, where the fallout's just beginning. The luxury store buzzed with a different energy now, the tension of the showdown giving way to a hum of awe and possibility. The marble floors still gleamed, the chandeliers still sparkled, but something fundamental had shifted. Elaine Carter stood tall, her presence a quiet command as security escorted a defeated Richard out the glass doors. Amanda the thief had been led away moments earlier, her once confident stride replaced by the clink of handcuffs. Customers lingered, phones still rolling, whispering about the woman who'd turned the tide. Elaine's calm hadn't wavered, but her eyes carried a fire, a promise that this wasn't just a victory but a beginning. The air felt lighter, cleaner, as if justice had swept through and left a fresh slate in its wake. Welcome back to Top Point, where stories don't just end, they echo, inspire, and demand we look deeper. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, because this is where Elaine's triumph becomes something bigger and you're part of it. Last time we watched her flip the script, revealing herself as the store's owner, exposing a thief, and firing a prejudiced manager in one breathtaking sweep. But at Top Point, it's not just about the climax. It's about what comes after. This is where Elaine rebuilds, where lessons sink in, and where a single day ripples into a legacy. Drop your thoughts in the comments. How would you finish a fight like this? And let's step into the resolution, because Elaine's not done changing the game. She turned to the police officers first, the two who'd stormed in, ready to haul her out. They stood stiffly near the entrance, their earlier bravado shaken as the truth settled in. The taller one avoided her gaze, the smaller one shifted, her face flushed. Elaine pulled out her phone, her movements deliberate, and dialed. The room hushed as she spoke, her voice steady. "Chief Jackson, it's Elaine Carter. I'm at my store and I need you here. Your officers took a call and sided with a racist manager without hearing me out." A murmur rippled through the crowd. She knows the chief? And within minutes, a sleek SUV rolled up outside. Chief Jackson stepped in, a tall man with a no-nonsense air, his presence silencing the whispers. "Miss Carter," he said, nodding respectfully. "What happened?" Elaine gestured to the officers. "They were ready to drag me out based on his word alone. No questions, no fairness." Jackson's eyes narrowed as he faced them. "Is this true?" The tall one stammered. "We thought—" Jackson cut him off, voice rising. "Your job's to assess, not assume. Did you ask her side?" The smaller officer shook her head, barely audible. "No, sir." His gaze turned cold. "This is unacceptable. My office first thing tomorrow. Disciplinary action is coming." He turned to Elaine, softer now. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This won't happen again." She nodded, gracious but firm. "Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it." With the officers dismissed, Elaine faced the staff and customers, her voice clear and resolute. "This store's done with discrimination and incompetence," she said. "From now on, we lead with fairness, respect, and dignity for everyone who walks through these doors." Applause broke out, a wave of agreement washing over the room. She glanced at Tanya, the sales associate who'd stood frozen through the chaos, and her tone softened. "Tanya, I've seen your potential. You're part of the solution here." Tanya's eyes welled up, her voice a whisper. "Thank you, Miss Carter." Elaine smiled faintly. "You're the new manager. Lead with what you've got inside." Tanya nodded, tears spilling, a quiet strength blooming in her stance. "Let's weave in a new thread. Meet Mr. Patel, a fictional customer I've crafted to show the ripple effect. He's in his 60s, a retired teacher who'd shopped this store years ago but stopped after a clerk's snide remark about his worn jacket. That day he'd watched from the back, drawn in by the commotion, and when Elaine spoke, something clicked. Days later he returned, hesitant but curious, and found Tanya at the helm. Warm, welcoming, no judgment in her eyes. He bought a watch, not because he needed it, but because the store felt different, like a place he belonged. She'd changed it, he'd tell his wife later, voice thick. "It's not just about the goods now, it's about the people." Mr. Patel's story isn't Elaine's, but it's born from her stand, a testament to how one voice can shift a culture. The next day, Elaine gathered the staff in the employee lounge, a small room smelling of coffee and nerves. They sat, some fidgeting, others wide-eyed, still reeling from the drama. She stood at the front, confident but approachable. "This isn't just about luxury," she began, her voice steady. "It's about the experience we create. It's not what you can afford, it's how you're treated. We're implementing new policies. Inclusivity, respect, fairness. No one walks in here feeling unwelcome, and no employee feels unsupported. This is for everyone." The room nodded, Tanya near the front, her new role giving her a quiet glow. "This isn't just talk," Elaine added. "It's our culture now, and it starts with you." Murmurs of approval followed, some reflecting, others exhaling relief at a fresh start. That evening, after closing, Elaine walked to the showroom alone. The lights dimmed, casting a warm glow over the displays. She stopped at a glass case, the handbag she'd admired on her first visit, the one she'd once dreamed of owning. Its design hadn't changed, but its meaning had. It wasn't just luxury anymore. It was perseverance, justice, a symbol of every someday she'd turned into today. She smiled, a peace settling over her, then turned and walked out, her steps steady. The store was hers, but it was just the beginning. There was a world beyond those doors, waiting for change, and she was ready. Elaine's story didn't stop there. It went viral. Within hours, clips of her calm takedown, Richard's floundering, and Amanda's arrest flooded social media. Justice Served trended, viewers worldwide cheering her on. "Handled with such grace," one comment read. Another called it a masterclass in standing up. Richard's reputation tanked, his face a symbol of arrogance, employers distancing fast. Elaine, though, shone. In interviews, she pushed forward. "This isn't about me. It's about how we see each other. True luxury lifts people up. It doesn't tear them down." Her words struck deep, sparking conversations about prejudice and power. At Top Point, this is why we're here. The lessons that linger. 3 stand out. First, strength lies in composure. Elaine's calm was her weapon, sharper than any shout. Second, judgment blinds us to truth. Richard missed Amanda because he was too busy chasing Elaine. Third, change starts with one voice. Her stand reshaped a store, then a movement. I've seen it myself. Once called out a bias in a meeting, quiet but firm, and watched the room shift. It's small next to Elaine, but it's the same spark. What's your spark? Share it below. Have you ever turned a wrong into a right? Hit like if inclusivity matters to you, subscribe for more stories that hit home, and share this with someone who needs it. This is Top Point. Elaine's legacy is ours now, and the conversation's just starting. The luxury store stood quiet now, its marble floors still, its chandeliers dimmed for the night. Elaine Carter had walked out those glass doors hours ago, her footsteps steady, her spirit unbroken. In her wake, she left more than a fired manager or a caught thief. She left a spark that refused to fade. The handbag in that glass case, the one she'd once pressed her nose to as a child, gleamed softly under the low lights. It wasn't just a prize anymore, it was a monument. To every cold morning she'd counted coins, every door slammed in her face, every someday she'd turned into today. Elaine had faced humiliation, prejudice, and resistance, and she'd risen above it all, not with noise, but with a quiet power that shifted the world beneath her feet. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something bigger. Welcome to the final chapter at Top Point, where stories don't just close, they resonate, challenge, and call us to act. If you've been with us through Elaine's journey, thank you. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't, because this is where we seal the deal. We've walked her path from a little girl dreaming outside shop windows to a woman building an empire, to the moment she turned a prejudiced showdown into a triumph for justice. At Top Point, we're about the moments that matter. And Elaine's story matters because it's ours, too. It's every time we've been judged, doubted, or dismissed, and every time we've pushed back. Let's reflect. Feel it deep and carry it forward. Because this is where the screen fades, but the conversation lights up. Standing by that handbag that night, Elaine didn't see a luxury item. She saw her mother's whispered promise, her own relentless climb, and the lives she'd touched along the way. Tanya, now manager, would lead with the kindness Elaine saw in her. Mr. Patel would return, feeling welcome for the first time. And beyond those walls, the world buzzed. Videos of her stand trending, her words in interviews sparking debates about fairness and dignity. This wasn't just about one store. It was about every space we enter, every chance we get to lift up or tear down. Elaine chose to lift, and that choice echoes louder than any chandelier's shine. For me, this hits personal. I've had my own small victories, calling out a bias, proving a doubter wrong, and each time it's shifted how I see courage. Elaine's story reshaped that view entirely. It's not about the loudest voice, it's about the steadiest one. She didn't need to scream to be heard. Her truth did the shouting. And that's the takeaway for us. We've all got a voice, a spark, a chance to change something. Maybe it's a word in a meeting, a stand in a store, or a story you share below. What's yours? Drop it in the comments. When have you turned a no into a yes? Because at Top Point, your echo matters. This is where Elaine's tale ends, but ours doesn't. She walked out ready to take on the world beyond those doors, and so can we. If her fire lit something in you, if you believe in standing up, in making spaces better, share this with someone who needs it. Hit like, subscribe, and let's keep it going. This is Top Point. The story's over, but the conversation's just begun. Elaine's legacy isn't hers alone. It's ours to carry. So what are you building with yours?